Let's get started. Um, Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Kacharski. I do some work with the Recovery Advocacy Project, and our focus is thinking and acting locally, working to give grassroots advocates in recovery, supporters of recovery, family members in recovery, the tools that they need to do their own community organizing, to do their own grassroots organizing. And we've been doing this series across the country called Vote Recovery. And the Vote Recovery idea had come from a town hall that we did in Pennsylvania back in May or June. And one of the participants of the town hall had asked a panel of speakers, how close are we to having recovery be a single voter issue? The same way that, the environment or guns or reproductive rights, like those are single voter issues that turn people out on election day or motivate people to get involved in their community. And so the conversation that came from that town hall was pretty amazing. And we said, hey, why don't we work to duplicate that conversation from now until election day? And then we started saying, well, what is a recovery voter? What does it mean to vote recovery? And we had decided um, to find different people in recovery or supporters of recovery across the country and have them share about those issues that they care about. And we actually we did some polling on this issue, and we asked people about that single voter issue of recovery, and we polled 1,200 likely voters. And this was a scientific poll. We polled 1,200 people that said we're going to go vote, and we asked them if they would consider crossing party lines if a candidate had a more attractive stance on mental health issues and addiction recovery issues. And 42% of the people that took that poll said yes, that they would consider it. And then another 30% said they would consider it, but they didn't commit to saying yes. And about 20% said no. And so that actually tells us that recovery can be this voting issue that inspires people to get involved. And then we actually asked the same question to people in recovery, family members, and supporters of recovery. And we asked them if they would consider crossing party lines to vote for somebody that had a more attractive stance on addiction recovery and mental health. And that number shot up to almost 90% of people that said yes. And so people in recovery are very motivated by the issue when they're going and voting on election day or getting involved in their community. And then the other thing from the survey that we think is important to share is that we also asked people in recovery, do you know where your candidates stand on the issues that you care about? And over 50% said no. And so on one hand, we say, yeah, we'd cross party lines and we're motivated by the issue. But on the other hand, we haven't done the actual work as voters. And so part of vote recovery is not about anybody saying you have to care about this, this, or this. It's really about all of us going through that process of thinking about the issues that we care about, diving deeper into those issues, and working to talk to candidates about those issues. I personally voted 4 or 5 days ago, and I had 5 people in my local races that I ended up voting for because they were willing to go back and forth with me on addiction issues, on addiction recovery issues. And I started the conversation with every candidate, whether they replied to me or not, with 12 words. And those 12 words were, this is what it's going to take for you to earn my vote. And that's it. That was my conversation starter. And I had some local candidates that talked to me about it and worked to earn my vote. And I have a lot of respect for that. And so we're going to hear from some recovery voters, but first we're just going to show you a resource that you can all take take that initiative of diving deeper into the issues that you care about. We built a website. It's a recovery voter hub. We built it for you, and people have been using it all over the country. And I'm going to introduce my coworker Garrett Hade, and he's going to talk about the website for a few minutes and actually show you different features of it, and then is going to work to and then turn things over to our moderator tonight, to hear from some recovery voters from the states that we're highlighting tonight, which are Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And so we welcome you tonight. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us. Garrett, I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. Before I start, I'm going to stop my video so my screen works better, but I just want to say hello. My name's Garrett Hade. I also work with the Recovery Advocacy Project, and I am a person in long-term recovery since March 3rd, 2015. And, just like Aaron was saying, the first time I ever voted was 4 years ago, and I was not in any way knowledgeable about the political process, the voting process, and I just really didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I was motivated to get involved at a civic level because I was tired of watching my friends die, right? And that was really all it took for me. I was having friends one after another, month after month, overdose in the recovery homes I was, associated with in Pasadena, California. And I was just kind of told that this was just the way things were going. And, I had some mentors and some colleagues who were like, if we don't get involved in the political process, the laws won't change, politicians won't listen to us. So that was kind of my, entering into this arena. But I just wanted to say that to say, like, 4 years ago, I did not know anything about this. I was just as intimidated as some that I speak to and are doing these with across the country. So if you're new to this or you're confused by this, welcome. I hope the tools that I can show you just briefly can kind of give you some insight and some knowledge of how the process works. So I'm going to stop my video for a second and share my screen. And there we go. Can everybody see my screen? Can thumbs up in the, yeah, I see some hands. Okay, so if you go to recoveryvoices.com/vote, and Aaron, if you could just type that into the chat. This is the Recovery Voter Hub, right? And like Aaron said, we built this specifically for our community, but obviously any and all are welcome to use it. And we wanted to make this like as simple as a process as possible, right? So if you scroll down onto this page, we kind of broke it into 4 steps. And the first thing that we highlight here, and I want to just talk briefly about, was the poll that we did. Polling is incredibly important to elected officials, right? It actually, allows them to know where the registered voters in their city, county, state, wherever, stand on issues, right? And I've actually gotten messages from people all over the country that have been using this poll just to kind of highlight the importance of these issues. Now, this poll was done in Clark County, Nevada. And like Aaron said, 42% answered yes, they would switch party lines, right? And that is a huge number, especially in the political climate today, right? Such a polarizing climate that we're in right now. To have 42% of people willing to switch party lines on an issue means that this issue, recovery, addiction, mental health, it influences people's lives, right? And this poll, like Aaron said, was done scientifically. This wasn't the recovery community. This is just people on a voter registration list, right? But and I won't go too far into this, but if you come to step 1 and you look at this, we put this in here for everybody to use, take advantage of, research your own. You can fill out the poll if you want to, but it's just here to kind of give you like a starting point, right? It's like, and it's a great tool if you're approaching your own elected officials. These numbers are impressive, right? Like people will be influenced at the ballot box around recovery, addiction, and mental health issue. Another really interesting number that we saw, and again, this isn't the recovery community, this is just registered voters, is that 68% of people believe judges should have more discretion when it comes to sentencing people, right? So for me personally, my addiction life, like, had I been in trouble one more time, my judge would have been mandated and mandatory sentenced me to prison, right? I wouldn't have had an option. And that is something that the general public, majority of people don't agree with, right? They think that judges should have discretion on whether sentencing people with drug offenses or nonviolent crimes related to drug use or things of that nature. Should have the ability to, defer those people out of the criminal justice system. So just something here for you to use. This is what Aaron was referring to when we took the questions to the recovery community. We asked, I think it was 1,097 people answered the same questions at the scientific poll. And you can go here, go through this, you can use this, you can print it, you can share it with your own elected officials. A lot of it, around naloxone, alternative sentencing. Majority of people think that stigma is a barrier to care. So please come here, check this out. I don't want to go through every line by line numbers, but it's here for you. It's here for our community. And it's definitely been helpful for others. So step 2. Now, when we say taking recovery to an issue, like personally to all of us on this call, different issues will inspire different people to get to the polls, right? And a number of issues, can be correlated to the recovery, the world of recovery and addiction. So for like me personally, housing was a big issue, right? It inspired me to get involved, right? But I didn't know a lot, and I met with elected officials and, they want to talk about criminal justice reform or reentry programs or family support services and those things that I know about, but not to the extent that I had prepared myself around the housing issue. So we created this page here for everybody. It's something that you can come gain more knowledge on different issues if you come here, and we're going to continue to add to this because this obviously isn't everything. But maybe there's a legislation that's going to help, family support services or peer recovery support specialists that it's coming up in your legislature, or you have set a meeting with an elected official to discuss these things. All of these links will take you to a knowledge base of either a partnering organization or an organization that specializes in these areas. So you can come here, and if you click on that, again, can't go through all of them right now, but it is a knowledge base for our community, for you to come and use and educate yourself on the issues that will inspire you to get out and participate civically. Coming back here, we'll go look at step 3. And this is kind of goes back to what I was first saying, right? So this is, elected officials, right? For the longest, I didn't know what the difference between offices were in my state. I didn't know that if I had an issue with my zoning board that I should, possibly the governor isn't the best person to write a letter to, right? If they're not allowing people to open recovery housing in a certain area, or naloxone isn't available, it doesn't always mean that I should get the president of the United States on the phone and try to fix this, right? There are other offices in the political process where you might actually have a better avenue of, getting some real change done and change happen in your local community. Oh, sorry, clicked on the wrong button. So this page I find extremely helpful. It's actually one we've been doing this. A lot of people across the country have messaged me on Facebook and hey, where's that page again? I didn't know that there was a difference between a U.S. senator and a state senator. I didn't know that those are two separate offices. I didn't know that there is a difference between a U.S. representative and a state representative. I told this on one of our town halls. I told this story. I had a friend who overdosed a couple weeks ago, and a police officer found him in his car responded to the overdose, and the police officer had naloxone on him. My friend's alive today and is in treatment, right? In my city where I live currently right now, the sheriff has an order to his police officers that is against regulations. They are not allowed to carry naloxone on them. So meaning that I have a local elected official who has a policy in his police department that naloxone should not be carried, meaning that he does not want his police officers to have the ability to save someone's life. So if my friend had overdosed on a different street corner with a different police officer responding, my friend might not be alive today. So like when Aaron says like we're focused on local and state, like the local and state levels are the things that will affect all of us day to day, right? Like right now we're living in this political time where there's so much energy focused on the presidential election, but most of us on this call, maybe not, but we probably won't have any interaction with the president of the United States for our entire life. But I will talk to my city council members. I will be able to access my mayor. I will be able to access my Congress people. Aaron told you he talked to 5 people running for office, which, somebody will be in an office. So like, these are the people that have access to us. These are the people that affect our daily lives. So it's very important to participate at the local level. Do not just think of this as a presidential election year and this is when you should vote. Elections happen constantly. School boards and your zoning commissions and your city council, like these people have an influence on issues that affect our community locally every single day. So when you're voting, when you're thinking about this, do not just think of this at the top level. Like we need to start looking very closely at local elected officials. And then finally, step 4 is vote. Here we go. Obviously taking this knowledge, taking action and actually voting. We put this, it's a little red button down here you can click on. But right from this site, and we're aware that in some states, registration deadlines might be passed. This isn't the last time elections will happen in this country, so just know that this tool is not coming down on November 4th. It's here. It'll always exist. You can come here. You can register to vote. You can check your voter status. Absentee and early voting. You can find your polling place if you're going to go vote in person. You can learn about your registration deadlines. And then if Aaron is going to do it, he can put it, there's a little pledge here that you can just take, just a simple action that we all can take. It says that I am going to vote, but I'm also going to, grab a friend or two and bring them to vote as well. And, walk your friends and colleagues and your family through the site and find out what issues inspire them and make sure that they are engaged in this process. And then the last thing that I want to show people, because we are getting close to election day, and if you're going to vote in person, if you come up here to the top, you will have reporting voter violations, voter suppression, and voter ID. If for any reason you get to a polling place and you find yourself unable to cast a ballot, maybe there's an ID issue or some sort of intimidation or just any sort of where you feel your right to vote is being violated, there are resources here. There are phone numbers, there are email addresses, and there are websites where you can report violations or you can find what avenues of action there are to you. So if that comes up, just know that this tool and this resource exists for you. I think the site has obviously a lot more to it, but I think for now that is a good kind of brief overview of the tools. They are here for you. You can always reach out to Aaron and myself or any of Robin who you'll be hearing from if you have questions. We're always happy to answer them and help any way we can. And with that, I think I will kick it back to Aaron, or we're going to kick it to Joseph and let him get started. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Garrett, for all the excellent information. The website is, again, in chat, so don't forget to click on that, save that on your computer browser, and circle back to that. And I believe we'll drop it in there a few other times. Good evening or early evening, to you all. My name is Joseph Hogan Sanchez. I too am a person in long-term recovery. I just recently celebrated 15 years. And I am extremely grateful for that. Recovery has given me the opportunity to be able to meet tons of awesome people like Aaron and Garrett and the folks that you'll be hearing from today on our panel. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and currently I'm in Austin, Texas, and I voted. So if you haven't voted, if you aren't registered to vote, or you have friends that haven't registered, that's a great way to use peer pressure on that, right? And when you go to vote, bring a friend. So I am the program director with Faces and Voices of Recovery. We're a national advocacy organization. And because I'm here in Austin, Texas, and I've had the opportunity to really build relationships with grassroots leaders, movers and shakers, and really get in contact and build relationships with recovery community organizations, whether they're local, grassroots, regional, or statewide. And I've had the opportunity of really getting to know and work with and become friends with our first panelist. Her name is Robin Payson, and she is has spent her professional career developing, managing, advocating for, and integrating public health, mental health, and substance abuse treatment programs and policy. In 2013, Robin started RLP Consulting, providing results-driven strategic solutions to achieve organizational and policy goals. Ooh. All right. You're getting excitement from the dogs. All right, Robin. Robin is the former executive director of Communities for Recovery, a community-based nonprofit that provides peer-based recovery services and supports to individuals in recovery from substance use and mental illness. In July 2018, Communities for Recovery was awarded the Joel Hernandez Voice of Recovery from the Association of Recovery Community Organizations, a national membership association that represents recovery community organizations nationwide. Communities for Recovery was the first recovery community organization in the country to be JCO accredited. In addition, in 2018, Communities for Recovery was accredited by the Council on Accreditation of Peer Recovery Support Services, the only accrediting body focused specifically on organizations that deliver peer recovery support services. They achieved an exemplary level and did an amazing job, I hear. Prior to Communities for Recovery, she served as executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. You may know them as NAMI. Yes, Darren, tongue twisters, definitely. And she was with them for 7.5 years. Ms. Payson also spent 7 years as a service system development specialist and assistant director for the Children's Service Department of the Community Health Division of the Texas Department of State Health Services. She's also a family member and has several individuals in her family who are impacted by substance use and mental illness, some of whom are in recovery. She has found healing through a variety of paths on her recovery journey. Ms. Payson received her bachelor's in psychology and biology, cum laude, from Williams College and her master's in health services administration from the School of Public Health of the University of Michigan. She also received her certificate in nonprofit management and leadership from the University of Texas, as well as attending the strategic management program at the RGC Center for Philanthropy and Community Service at the University of Texas at Austin. But above all, she is an awesome, amazing human being. She has a great smile and her spirit shines through. Please join me in welcoming Robin.
Hi, everyone. That was really embarrassing. So I'm just going to cut right into how I became a passionate about voting on recovery issues. I've always voted. That was always something I was brought up that was important. But you know, I actually, because of my work, ended up learning more about getting involved in the legislative process. When I worked for the state and when I worked for NAMI Texas, I had responsibilities that included, you know, like getting into the weeds, bill analysis, but I remember when I first went to the Capitol, I was so intimidated. I couldn't find my way around. I kept getting lost. I don't know if any of you have been to the Austin State Capitol, but they have an underground area that's like 3 levels, and then the above ground Capitol building. And I felt I didn't feel prepared, although my job required me to go in and talk to senators and representatives, and, you know, but I was really passionate. So I had a friend remind me that, and it was really helpful. They said, you know, they're all human beings, just like you. And that really helped me get over my nervousness and anxiety about going in, you know, and being able to relate to them. And then people said, well, you know, you have to have appointments. Well, I remember a couple of times, you know, if you're going to meet up with people, and there was a couple of times where I had an afternoon where meetings were canceled and I really needed to do some advocacy work. And I thought, you know, I'm just going to go down to the Capitol and see if I can meet up with, you know, some of the staff without appointments. So I just went in and knocked on the door and walked in and introduced myself. There wasn't a single office that turned me away. There wasn't a single time I didn't get to go in and meet with a staff person. And it gives me goosebumps right now, because all I had to say is, you know, I work with the National Alliance on Mental Illness Texas, or I work with Communities for Recovery. We help people who are in recovery from substance use or substance use and mental illness. And in every single time they introduced me to a staff person who had a family member or they themselves were in, every single time, because as we all know, these are issues that that affect all of us, including everybody at the Capitol. You know, you might ask yourself, how do they work so hard and work 12 and 16 and 20-hour days? You know, week after week after week. It's a pathway for many folks, especially all those young interns, to get into trouble with substances. So I just want to say to you, you know, all you have to do is have your passion and use your passion to meet with your policymakers. And I love what Garrett had to say in that list of your sheriff, your city council, your mayor, your school board, because mental illness, substance use and mental illness and recovery issues cover such a broad area. It touches on all aspects of our lives. And so you see that list, you know, does include housing and does include criminal justice and does include all the things. And as a family member in long-term recovery myself, you know, I can see how substance use and mental illness has affected my loved ones. And so that really motivates my passion to influence policy. And I just love the work that Garrett and Aaron are doing. And I love the website. It's an amazing, amazing resource. And I love the work that Faces and Voices of Recovery are doing. So I appreciate being able to be on the panel today, and just say, you know, start knocking on doors, asking questions. I love the question Aaron posed, which is, what's your position? I counted like, how many words is that? You know, what's your position on these issues? Because simply asking the question raises the awareness that we are voters and what we think matters. Thank you.
And thank you, Robin. Definitely voices count, right? Absolutely. And what I was hearing from you is just getting in there and doing it. And our next speaker is a get in there and do it person, and also a dear friend of mine. Like everybody on the panel is a dear friend of mine. I've had the opportunity to really rub elbows with the best of them, and moving and shaking, definitely. Our next panelist, Jimmy McGill, does a lot of moving and shaking in his work. So despite a lifetime of incarceration and 23 years of drug addiction stemming from childhood trauma, Jimmy McGill was able to find and sustain long-term recovery. He is the state peer recovery coordinator for the Arkansas State Drug Director's Office, and he holds multiple peer recovery certifications. His lived experience has allowed him the chance to lead the development of peer recovery through the state of Arkansas. Jimmy is a trainer of trainers and has assisted in the training of over 330 peer recovery support specialists. He designed and developed the Peers Achieving Collaborative Treatment Program, also known as the PACT Project, allowing Arkansas to place peer recovery specialists inside the Division of Youth Services, emergency rooms, drug courts, jails, reentry centers, and community service centers. He spearheaded the development of the Arkansas model of peer recovery, which has now gained national attention. He assisted the Appalachian Consulting Group in developing a prison peer program for North Dakota. He and his wife are the founders of Next Step Recovery Housing, a nonprofit recovery foundation that houses people in recovery, assisting them with employment and everyday life skills. Jimmy was a founding member of both the Arkansas Advisory Committee and the Arkansas Peers Achieving Recovery Together Coalition. He is currently the vice chair for Region 6 Peer Recovery Council. He's a known keynote speaker and advocate for reentry and recovery, constantly fighting against the stigma of addiction. Jimmy, awesome.
Is it on me now? Hey, thanks, Joseph,
All
so
on you.
much.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely glad to be here, and I'm definitely passionate about us and people. Before I jump into that, don't let me get too excited. I'm a person in long-term recovery from addiction, and despite, like Joseph read, despite a lifetime of incarceration, I've still been able to carve out a really nice life for myself because of the gift of recovery. So I would like to say, I actually have right here my discharge papers. It took me a long time to get these, and so I will be going to register to vote tomorrow. So allow me to clear up the misconception, and there is a really big misconception that somebody with a criminal history can't vote, and that's simply not true. Not only can we vote, we should vote. And we should use our lived experience to be that change agent to shift the perceptions of those who don't quite get it. I'm fortunate enough to be in a state that has leadership that buys into the concept of recovery support all the way from the top. I've been able to come out of prison after multiple trips, right? And become the first parolee to hold a state position under the Department of Human Services. And they had to update policies to hire me. I was actively on parole. And I can remember flying to Texas to meet Joseph for the first time, and Robin, who taught me my first experience with grant writing, right? Here I am on parole and having to get permission from my parole officer to travel for the governor. So it's been really an amazing journey. But the one thing that we bring to the table is we are the proof in the pudding that people can change, deserve a right to change. And if people are not going to stand behind us and believe in us, then we've got the right to replace those people. And it was people like Robin and Joseph and Garrett that really taught me that the whole political arena works for us. And it really is about the local relationships for me. because of the relationships formed with sheriffs and prosecuting attorneys, in Arkansas, we've been able to build out recovery programs in what started with one jail and now is at 6 different jails, including the largest jail in the state. Because of relationships with people that are actually in here now watching this, Vina and Abby, we've been able to place peer support in ACC, in the MAT reentry units and the hospital emergency departments. And those are just simple relationships. You know, I like to contribute the fact that using a voice as the proof in the lived experience, we were able to change the state law regarding recovery in Arkansas. House Bill 1433, which became Act 951, where our governor made it law that people in recovery with a criminal history can work for state agencies. And not only did he sign that in a law, he declared an emergency. You know, so one voice can make a difference. And I'm proof of that, right? Like, we can no longer afford to be scared about what people think. This is not about political rhetoric. It's not about red or blue. It's not about any of that. For me, when I speak on behalf of recovery and reentry, I'm speaking for a whole population of people who will never reenter society again, who not only, and if they do, may die from the disease of addiction, right? But I have got a long list of friends who are staring down that long hallway with a mirror, and they'll never get the right to say what they want for life, right? Because addiction was treated like a criminal a justice issue instead of a healthcare issue. And so it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about us. And when we pull together and we truly mobilize recovery, we do make a difference. And so if you're on parole, I'm speaking to you. As soon as you get off, go get your discharge papers, go right on down to the circuit court clerk's office, get your voting right back like I'm doing tomorrow, and go cast your ballot. And I'm excited because, you know, Joseph, I was supposed to die in prison or addiction, and here I am working for state leadership and going to cast my vote because my vote does count. And so I love you guys. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Jimmy. And, you know, truly, people with lived experience making impact in our cities, in our states, making change. We are truly, as people with lived experience, we've truly had the opportunity to experience firsthand systems of care that may not be effective or as effective, and people slip through the cracks and people end up dying. And so fortunately, Jimmy, you've been able to really go through the ringer and come out not only shining, but being able to use that lived experience and make changes within your state. Truly speaking to the passion that you have for recovery, the recovery community, and amplifying the voices of those that may not have the opportunity that you do to have those one-on-one conversations. And speaking about passion, our next panelist, oh my goodness, she oozes passion. When we were planning this last week, she was overwhelmed with emotion, and it just comes through. And I think a lot of the fire that drives us to make change is a lot of that passion. So Melissa Montano is a certified peer support worker and trainer. She's a woman in long-term recovery. She currently serves the state of New Mexico as a program manager for the Office of Peer Recovery and Engagement, which is housed in the Behavioral Health Services Division and a part of the Human Services Department. Her work focuses on leveraging the lived experience of those with a mental health or substance use disorder as a way to improve the continuum of care. Ms. Montano has built her career in lifting people up and helping them make their way into the behavioral health field with integrity and a strong emphasis on ethics. Her current efforts focus on connecting peer support workers to those experiencing dislocation due to COVID-19, and overall workforce development for those in recovery. Melissa?
Ooh, wow. Thank you for that introduction. I remember there was times in my life when people didn't want to introduce me at all. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about my recovery. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. I just celebrated 10 years of continuous sobriety. And for me, what that looks like is that I do not put anything that's mind altering or ingest anything in my system no longer. Why? Because I don't want to, and because I do have a program, and because I have support, and because that hand was given to me to get out of that hole I was in. And I was told, and I was taught that I'm not alone. And that's what we do in recovery. So I don't know how to follow Jimmy McGill, man. I met that guy in Austin, me and Nathan. It was a blast, and we're friends. And part of my life was not being able to be in any kind of relationship. And the fact that, that I can do that today and be an advocate for the voiceless, especially on the issues that Garrett touched on a while ago. And there's another thing. I know I'm supposed to be here. My grandson's name is Garrett. God puts people in my life today so that we can help make change. I'm especially grateful to see my mom and dad here. I didn't expect them to be on camera. They're here. My niece got them set up so they could hear me. These are the people that I would never sleep at night. And then now I get to see Ben Bass here. You guys, full circle. Ben Bass opened his doors to me in El Paso over 13 years ago. And he prayed that I would get this. And I think his prayers were answered, because I'm done. But anyway, the reason I'm here today is because 100 years ago, my grandmother was 6 years old. And in 1920, women were given that right. It finally went into effect. And I know it took years after that so that states could change their minds and their rules and the regulations around it. So it took a while. But my grandmother lived to be 3 months shy of 100. And my other grandmother, my dad's mom, also lived to be 93. So I come from good stock, but these are the females that paved the way so that I could be standing here or sitting here on Zoom today. In 1914, they lived through a pandemic. And now I'm sitting here 100 years later via Zoom talking about that I voted today. And the women in recovery that paved the way and made it comfortable so that I could go and sit in a 12-step program and approach our legislators and our local judges and be part and collaborate with them, because of the platform that I get to sit at today, because of the women that believed in me and told me that I could do it. Because it is intimidating, Robin. It is very intimidating sitting in interviewing for the position of the Office of Peer Recovery and Engagement Program Manager. I was so scared that I almost didn't. But it was females at that office, and one of them's on here, that said, you have to try. It was the warden at the detention center that said, you get out of here and you go represent at a bigger level. And so now when Garrett said, those 12 words, I wrote them down. This is what it's going to take to earn my vote. I went to vote today. It felt good. I talked about it. I had a lot of female empowerment with me. I said it earlier, Mama, I love you. I know that you paved so many ways. And the relationships that I get to have today on the issues that are passionate to me, and to the folks in recovery that I sit with at the table that we get to sit with and make decisions for our peers, for for our families, for our future grandkids, for our, I'm paving the way for the littles in my life. And when I looked at that ballot today, I saw stuff that really got my heart, like the word senior citizen, like, those bonds. I'm clueless about that, but I, like Garrett, know that I have to get educated and keep coming back to these Zoom meetings and sitting with folks like you and doing these town halls. And I believe that the revolution of peer support is happening right now. And I looked up the definition of that, and it's, what revolution means is that I'm sorry, that when we have and care about something so passionate, we're going to make changes. And I believe that all of us together can do that. I'm honored to sit here. I'm honored to have voted today. I'm honored for all the females and males that helped pave the way so that I could do this. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Didn't I say that she was passionate? Hit my heartstrings. And it's a lot of that passion that, especially as folks in recovery, as voters, that our passion is contagious. Our approach to helping and supporting oozes out from all of us and makes impact in our communities. And our next speaker is a mover and shaker and a community organizer. I mean, we would do a lot of work alone, but we can make more of an impact if we're bringing a community with us. And it takes some time, talent, patience, a lot of cat herding to really mobilize and pull together your community. And so our next speaker, Carl Hunter. Carl is the executive director of Building Promise USA and the principal of the Invictus Consulting Group. He relocated to Austin in October of 2017. Carl, has it really been that long? It's been like, a snap of the fingers. So he's relocated here to Austin in October of 2017 from the state of New Jersey. Carl's a graduate of Morris Brown College in Atlanta, Georgia, and received his Master's of Divinity degree from New Brunswick Theological Seminary. He is also an iterant elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Carl has over 20 years in the nonprofit and human service sectors, working to improve access to services for marginalized communities. His unique set of skills include community organizing, coalition building, legislative advocacy, project planning, and design, group facilitation, and public speaking. In 2018, Carl became a Hog Peer Policy Fellow. All of these were tongue twisters for Recovery People, a recovery-based nonprofit organization headquartered here in Austin. In this capacity, he provided technical assistance and was a subject matter expert for legislators and their staff during the 86th session of the Texas legislature. He is also a member of the Substance Use Disorders Coalition and the Coalition for Healthy Minds. In 2019, Carl was appointed to the executive committee of the Travis County Reentry Roundtable and the Travis County Substance Use Disorder Work Group. Carl served as a panelist and subject matter expert at the Steve Hick School of Social Work at the University of Texas and as a workshop facilitator at Bowie State University in Bowie. Carl recently worked with the students from JLB, School of Public Policy, to design and implement a community-based focus group and form initiative for the Reentry Advocacy Project, and utilizing a participatory planning model. Since moving to Austin, Carl has been recognized by the Austin chapter of the NAACP for his leadership in the Austin community. His past award Awards include being recognized by the National Congress of Black Women, Trenton Mercer chapter, and the Senate and General Assembly of the State of New Jersey for his leadership, volunteerism, and commitment to the greater community. However, Carl considers his greatest accomplishment being in sustained recovery from substance use disorder, which has enabled him to be a father to Ashley and Isaiah, and grandfather to Chloe, Jules, and godfather to Candace, and an inspiration to myself and others. Carl?
Whoa, is that me?
That's
Damn.
you. That's
wow,
you.
Wow. I came to Austin on October 7th, 2017 to go to rehab. So all that stuff didn't stop crack from wrecking my life, right? So yeah, I say I'm in sustained recovery, but you know how I usually introduce myself? My name is Carl, I'm an addict. I'm drug-free, not drug-proof, and the successful day for me is being clean. I've had 1,095 successful days, 26,297 successful hours, 1,577,846 successful minutes, and 94,670,777 seconds of success, right? Because nothing is possible for me, was ever possible for me without being clean. You know, so that's the foundation and the cornerstone of my life. You can have a really good foundation, right? But if any of you guys know about construction, if the cornerstone is off, right? No matter how nice the foundation is, the house is off, you know? And so the foundation for me is, you know, the second sentence of the first step in the fellowship that I go to. It says, staying clean must come first, right? And so that's how I live my life. And my life has gotten profoundly better as a result. Joseph told you that I came here on October of, well, he didn't tell you I came here in October of 2017, but I did to go to rehab. 100 days later, I was walking back into that rehab on an H&I commitment. 300 days later, I was standing before the Select Committee on Opioid and Substance Use Disorder as a peer policy fellow for the Hogg Foundation. And I worked for an organization called Recovery People. During the legislative session, the 86th session, I had 2 laws that made it through the House and to the Senate. Dude, let me tell you, the thing that blows me away is that a crackhead from New Jersey almost had laws in the state of Texas, right? And that's the power of what happens to us when we take that one ingredient out of our life that has caused us some insanity. And the deal is the word recovery. You can only recover. You can find something new, but you can only recover something that you've lost. So in actuality, those of us who have in sustained recovery are just the people that we are always meant to be, right? Without the drugs, right? So if you're clean today or sober today or whatever you are today, just know that you're having a successful day. You know, as you can see, I'm an African-American male, so voting means a whole lot to me, right? From a historic perspective, you know, people look like me didn't have our full rights until 1965. You know, I was born in 63. My parents were born in 32. So actually they weren't full American citizens until 2 years after I was born, right? So voting, you know, it's very important to me. People look like me died just going to the polls, you know, and then that's real significant. But what really stands out for me, and they made me go last, and I, you know, crazy part is I'm real thankful for being here, because I'm like, well, who would want me to come, right? That's that low self-esteem stuff that goes on with me, right? But being behind all these great people, it's an honor just to be on the same panel with them, and to have Joseph, my big brother, be the facilitator, and have someone that I really care about thinking enough of me to invite me to come. And I always say that there are 2 people on here that I claim with saving my life. And that's the importance of recovery community organizations, because I didn't have anywhere to go when I came here, and I found Communities for Recovery, and I went there every day like it was a job, right? And as a result, I stayed clean. What becomes important to me is that, I got clean in an anonymous program, right? And my disease made me anonymous and made me not want to speak and made me want to hide the person I really was. But in recovery for me, it thrust me back into the mainstream of life. And as a result of being in the mainstream of life, I get to fully engage in the mainstream of life again. And that means, right, that voice that was lost, right, has the right to come back out and be able to speak. What the biggest lesson that I learned, Joseph told you that I was an organizer. We did a lot of protesting, right, and raising, and that was real cool. But until you go on the other side of the door where policy means everything, and I began to understand the connection between the two. You can protest, but protest without shifting and making policy is just a bunch of people walking around outside, right? And nothing happening, and they can ignore you, right? But the funny thing about walking in that door, you get intimidated, right? By the sheriffs, the state police standing there and walking through the metal detector. I'm from Jersey. Everybody has guns here. That's crazy, right? So you can walk through, right? But you get that feeling, not so much of intimidation, is because I don't belong here, right? But the deal is that you do. You know, the fact that you were born an American citizen or not, or you were just a citizen here, right? You have the right to go through those doors and walk into any office and tell them what you think, right? And there's a lot of power in that. You know, during the last legislative session, I had an opportunity to do public testimony, right? And the first one I did was for the drug. It was for the Medicaid drug. What is it called? Well, it was the review board. I'll just give you the brief. It was the review board, the Medicaid review board, that put drugs on the Medicaid list, right? And I was a person with lived experience, and I was there to practice my testimony so I could go back to the legislature and do my public testimony. But I had the opportunity to give a testimony, and as a result, this guy from New Jersey, his name was put in the San Antonio News and the Statesman as someone with lived experience talking about medically assisted treatment drugs, right? Now I'm a minister, right? But I thought that as a result of what I've done, I wouldn't be able to impact lives like I used to, right? But the deal is this has given me a vehicle to impact people's lives, because when it was said and done, those medically assisted treatment drugs were put on the Medicaid list. So now people who weren't able to get those drugs were now able to get those drugs. And when I sat and thought about it, I was able to impact lives of people that I would never see. You know, I remember my mother crying because she thought I was going to die. And, you know, and people were thinking about, well, he just needs to go to rehab one more time. Well, there's some people who need medically assisted treatment, and that's the only thing that can keep them living. And it gave me the opportunity to lend my voice, right? And it was special because everybody else was a doctor or worked for a pharmaceutical company, but I was a person with lived experience. So that gave me credibility, right? Because I know what it is to have to detox, and I want to, and how it feels in the medically assisted. So I was able to express that to the board, Drug Utilization Review Board. That's what it was, right? And as a result, those drugs were put onto that list in people's lives who I'll never see in the state of Texas. I might have saved lives. I know I might have made a lot of parents, right? Sleep better at night because they know that their child was being taken care of. That's the power of our voices. You know, during the last legislature, I was working on legislation for rural recovery, right? And you know, it almost made it to the Senate, but if it would became of law, then we would have had RCOs in rural communities, right? In rural communities at this point, you know, if you live, I'm from Jersey, so I don't know much about this stuff, but I've heard that if you live in a rural community, you have to maybe go 2 or 3 communities over just to make it to a meeting. And if you have to go to rehab, you can't go to rehab in your community. And usually, since there are no meetings and we need a lot of recovery, they have to move from where they live to a larger city in order to engage in the recovery process, right? If that law would have happened, right? So all that I can express to you is that you have to, those of you who are in recovery are supposed to come back into the mainstream of life. And as a result of being in the mainstream of life, you're supposed to engage the civic and political process. Because if you don't, who will? Thanks for letting me share. Thanks for inviting me here.
Thank you, Carl. And, thank you to all our panelists. Give them a round of applause. It's really speaking to a lot of passion, using our lived experience and just what we see and being knowledgeable about how to get involved and how to use our voice and just getting in there and doing that. Then, of course, bringing a friend along. Thank you all again, panelists, so much, and for everybody that's attended, and Aaron and Garrett for the opportunity to facilitate awesome conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you, Joseph, for doing an amazing job facilitating, and all 4 of our speakers tonight were inspiring. And Garrett and I had this conversation early on before we started to do some of these. And Garrett had said something about, when you're in early recovery and you like hear stuff and you hear stuff and you hear stuff and then you hear it again and something like dawns on you and you're like, oh, I get it now. And he's like, well, let's do that with voters and voting. And, for somebody who, it's like, if there's somebody here that, like, if you think your voice doesn't matter, if you think your vote doesn't matter, I think all 4 of the recovery voters tonight, like, said something, at least that I heard, that like dawned on me, like, oh, like I get it, like I understand why this person's civically engaged and getting out the vote. So the other thing I just wanted to just say is awesome is Militia, it's amazing that you were an amazing speaker, and I think it's amazing that your family's here as well. And I think that we should think in that capacity of, obviously it's not just people in recovery that are affected by recovery, the same way that if people have cancer or MS or autism, it's not just the individuals living with those conditions, right? It's family members, it's communities. And so, we're doing a massive, get out the vote effort, get out the recovery vote effort that includes family members, that includes people in recovery and our supporters. And that's a lot of people across this country. And we do actually have a national Get Out the Recovery Vote rally that we're organizing with Faces and Voices of Recovery and Latino Advocacy Recovery and the Inclusivity Caucus of Recovery Advocacy Project. We're inviting you all to attend that on Sunday, November 1st, which is the Sunday before the election. It's at 4 Eastern or 3 o'clock Central. It'll be 3 o'clock Central. And we hope that you're all attend that rally as well. I just put the link in the chat box, recoveryvoices.com/rally. And the last thing I wanted to say, I was on one of these last night and I was listening to a woman who was in recovery, and she ran for office on a recovery platform. And one thing that like Garrett and I have been on like all of these vote recoveries, and I've found myself surprised of how many people and supporters of recovery are like actively running for office now. And what the woman said last night, she said, I had to be asked 70 times before I said, yes, I'll run for office. Like she had community members that were like, run for office, run for office, run for office. And she kept saying no, and kept saying no. She's like, and she said, you know, I usually need to be asked for 70 times. And so she got asked 70 times and then she ran. So I think that if we all ask Militia and Carl and Robin and Joseph, this will be like and Jimmy, this will be like the first of 70 times. And so, you know, I really do think that next step for a lot of us, you know, think about if people that are running for office aren't speaking to your issues, then become part of that, become part of that conversation, become part of that, and run for office locally. If we're thinking and acting locally, I had a number of, you know, personally, I just had a number of local races where people were just running unopposed. I'm just like, no. And so if people aren't speaking to your issues, then we can take that next level. But thank you, everybody, to all the speakers, and Joseph, and I hope everybody can attend the rally on November 1st. It's recoveryvoices.com/rally. And Gary, I don't know if you needed to chime in or wanted to chime in on anything, but thank you, everybody. This was fantastic.
No, just thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you to all, obviously, everyone who participated tonight. Without you joining, there's no real conversation. So thank you all.
Good night, everyone.